Imagine for a second, right, that a psychiatrist sits you down
Mm,
and they tell you that the cure for your crippling lifelong depression isn't going to be found in a pharmacy.
right.
Instead, the prescription they give you involves standing barefoot in the dirt, staring directly at the sun for exactly 10
Oh,
seconds,
wow.
all while meticulously tracking the vertical orbit of the moon. I mean, it sounds like absolute ancient mysticism, doesn't it?
It really does. It sounds like something you'd hear at a fringe wellness retreat. Definitely not in a clinical psychiatric setting.
Exactly. And this is the crazy part. What if there is heavily researched statistical data suggesting that this actually works?
Yeah, and that idea, it just completely upends the localized, strictly biological view of mental health that we are also accustomed to. I mean, we're basically taught that our minds are locked entirely inside our skulls.
Right. Like if we feel down, it's just a chemical imbalance. If we feel manic, it's environmental stress. We're sort of taught that we are the isolated captains of our psychological ships.
Right.
But then you step into this world of circadian biology intertwined with celestial mechanics. And the roof just gets blown off that localized little room. You realize the cosmos itself might literally be pulling the strings of human cytology.
It's a huge shift in perspective.
It really is. So welcome to today's deep dive. If you are listening to this and you're looking for a massive paradigm-shifting aha moment about how you tick, you are in exactly the right place.
We've got a really unique one today. We're exploring excerpts from this fascinating 2024 work. It's called The Mental Moon by Stein Kuipers.
Yeah.
And it is a highly unusual text. It basically blends narrative fiction with incredibly intense, heavily cited psychiatric theory and ancient multidimensional astrology.
Okay, let's unpack this because our mission for this deep dive is to explore the surprising, heavily researched intersections between modern psychiatry, ancient astrology, and our circadian rhythms.
Yeah.
And specifically, we're looking at the absolute roller coaster that is bipolar disorder.
Right. And, let's set some ground rules for today before we get too far in. While the source material wraps these concepts in this fictional narrative, we are going to be treating its highly specific data points and theories as our factual landscape for this discussion.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We're just going to lay the research out on the table, look at the historical and biological mechanisms, and really just see what patterns emerge.
I love that. And we have to start with the human element of this, right? Because that's where the actual stakes are.
Yeah.
The text introduces us to a character named Elena, who is battling bipolar disorder. And the author refers to the illness using this old Victorian nickname.
Oh, the Winston Churchill one.
Yes. Winston Churchill actually popularized it for his own depression. He called it the black dog.
Which is honestly such a visceral, accurate way to describe the clinical reality of the condition. I mean, it isn't just a static feeling of sadness.
Right.
The black dog operates in waves. It attacks, it sort of retreats into the shadows, and then, it inevitably attacks again.
It's cyclical.
Hmm.
And the text anchors this very firmly in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders.
Yeah.
But for those listening who might not know the clinical difference, how does the text separate bipolar 1 from bipolar 2?
Okay, so the primary distinction really lies in the severity and the type of the manic episodes.
Okay.
So bipolar 1 is characterized by severe mania. This is where a person's nervous system is essentially running 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Wow.
Yeah, they might experience racing thoughts, hypersexuality, extreme agitation, and often zero need for sleep for days on end.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. And interestingly, someone with bipolar, I might not always have severe depressive crashes.
Oh, wait, really? I always assumed the crash was guaranteed.
Not always with bipolar 1, but bipolar 2, on the other hand, involves hypomania, which is a less severe, almost productive hypat, but it is inevitably paired with crippling major depressive episodes.
Got it.
So that's the classic wave pattern that the character Elena experiences.
Okay, that makes sense. And the source material really goes after the conventional way we treat these conditions today. It brings up two culturally famous critiques to illustrate this, like frustration with modern psychiatry.
Right, I remember these.
Yeah, first, it references Abigail Schreier's argument that standard talk therapy can sometimes backfire by causing rumination. Basically, the idea is that if you spend an hour every week focusing entirely on your trauma, you might accidentally be watering the weeds, so to speak.
Right, making it bigger by obsessing over it.
Exactly. And then it brings up that infamous Tom Cruise interview from years ago where he argued that antidepressants are essentially just chemical band-aids that are masking the underlying issue. Now, just to be very clear to you listening, we are not endorsing either of those viewpoints today.
No, definitely not.
We're just impartially reporting what the text uses to highlight a deep systemic frustration with standard treatments.
Right. The author is using those cultural touchstones to point out a perceived limitation in how we currently handle mental health. The implication is that, we are treating the symptoms without ever really understanding the engine that's driving the illness.
I kept thinking of it this way while reading it. Like, if standard therapy is just putting a bucket under a leaky roof, and pills are just putting on noise-canceling headphones so you can ignore the sound of the dripping water.
That's a great analogy.
Right. But what is actually causing the rain? Like, why does the storm keep coming back?
This raises an important question, because if the illness doesn't just sit there statically, but rather comes in these repetitive, predictable waves, well, then logic dictates we need to look for cycles.
Okay.
If the black dog is cyclical, what natural gears are turning to bring it in and out of a patient's life?
Which brings us to a real-world psychiatric breakthrough that the text leans on heavily. And I want to emphasize, this isn't astrology. This is hard science from Dr. Thomas Ware.
Yes, Dr. Ware was a highly prominent researcher at the National Institute of Mental Health. He is the psychiatrist who actually discovered seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, the depression that hits millions of people in the winter when ambient sunlight drops.
Right. Everybody knows about SAD.
Exactly. But the text focuses on a later massive study of his that was published in 2017. He spent years tracking patients with rapid cycling bipolar disorder, and he was logging their daily mood swings against astronomical data.
Which is wild for an NIMH researcher to do.
It is, and he discovered that their mood swings were intricately linked to 3 distinct lunar cycles.
Wait, 3? Because I think most of us just assume there's one moon cycle, right?
Yeah.
Like the phases, new moon, full moon. What are the other 2 gears?
Okay, so the first is the one we all know, the lunar phase cycle. Ware's data showed that mania tends to sync up precisely with the new and full moons, while depression aligns with the quarter moons.
Okay, that's one.
But the second cycle is the declination cycle. This tracks the moon's distance north or south of the celestial equator.
Right.
And the third is the anomalistic cycle, which tracks the moon's physical elliptical distance from Earth. When it's closest to us, it's at perigee, and when it's farthest, it's at apogee.
Okay, I have to push back here for a second, because when you start talking about the moon's distance making people manic, it sounds like the premise of a werewolf movie.
It really does.
Literally, the text even has a scenario with a werewolf transforming during a supermoon stationary at its highest declination. But seriously, how does declination, like how high or low the moon is relative to the equator, how does that actually physically change things for us on the ground?
It's all about angles, atmospheric penetration, and gravitational intensity.
Okay.
Think about the sun in the summer. The sun doesn't get physically closer to the Earth in July, it just gets higher in the sky. That's a higher declination.
Oh, I see.
Right? And because of that angle, its rays hit the Earth much more perpendicularly, which transfers more direct, concentrated energy through the atmosphere.
That makes total sense.
Yeah. And the exact same physics apply to the moon. A higher northern declination means the moon's rays and its gravitational pull are hitting the northern hemisphere much more directly.
Wow. And the text points out something incredibly alarming happening right now in real time with this. Since 2023, we have entered a period called a maximum lunar standstill.
Yes. So the moon's orbit fluctuates over this 18.6-year cycle. Right now, it has reached 28 degrees of declination, which is crazy enough, actually higher than the sun's maximum declination.
Just nuts.
It is. Essentially, the cosmos has turned the volume knob all the way up on these lunar cycles. The gravitational and electromagnetic pull is peaking, which the source suggests is quietly exacerbating depressive episodes and sleep disturbances globally right now.
Definitely makes you wonder if we can, turn that volume dial down, but we'll get to that later.
Sure.
For now, if the moon is doing this to the entire planet,
Yeah.
why isn't everyone bipolar?
Right, why just some people?
It's exactly.
Why is the character Elena devastated by this while her neighbor is probably totally fine? What makes one person's brain a lightning rod?
That is the exact logical gap the text addresses next. It transitions from the when of the cycles to the who.
Okay.
To figure out the baseline susceptibility, the characters in the story cull the astrological birth charts of 25 famous people who suffered from documented bipolar disorder. We're talking people like Carrie Fisher, Kurt Cobain, Robin Williams, Ernest Hemingway.
And when I was reading this, I was expecting a trend, maybe a 60–70% correlation. But the number they give is insane.
What's fascinating here is the statistical uniformity of the data set.
Yeah.
In this group of 25 bipolar celebrities, 100% of them, every single one, showed what the text calls lunar afflictions in their natal birth charts.
Oh, and I need to stop you there.
Yeah.
100%. Of 25 random charts, statistically, that feels almost impossible to get that kind of uniformity in any data set.
It's definitely a striking claim.
What exactly are they defining as an affliction so broadly that everyone fits into it? Well, it's actually a very specific, rigid set of rules from Indian astrology, which is called Jyotish.
Okay.
A lunar affliction means that at the exact time and location of their birth, their moon was receiving hard aspects, meaning mathematically antagonistic angles, from malefic planets.
And malefic just means the planets that traditionally cause friction or hardship, right?
Correct. The primary malefics include Saturn, which is the planet associated with restriction and melancholia.
Right.
Mars, the planet of aggression and sudden severing. The Sun, which in this system acts as this burning harsh force. And Rahu.
Okay, I have to ask about Rahu, because that is definitely not a planet I remember learning about in middle school science class.
Right. Well, Rahu isn't a physical rock in space. Rahu is the north lunar node.
Okay, what is that?
In astronomy, it's the exact mathematical calculation where the moon's orbit crosses the sun's path, which is called the ecliptic. It is the literal intersection point that causes eclipses. Yeah, and in ancient astrology, these intersection points aren't just empty space. They are viewed as massive energetic crosshairs.
That's a cool way to put it.
And sometimes in these charts, the natal moon was caught in what they call kartari, which translates to scissors. Imagine the moon is hemmed in on both sides by these malefic forces, like a blade at the neck on either side.
Okay, the example that completely crystallized this for me in the text was Ray Davies, the frontman for the rock band The Kinks.
Oh, yeah. This was intense.
It really was. The text details how he tragically attempted suicide on stage on July 15, 1973. And when the characters looked at the real-time planetary transits for that exact day and laid them over his birth chart, the math was just terrifying.
It's chilling when you see the alignment.
Yeah. On that specific day, the transiting Sun and Saturn conjoined his natal moon, Mars squared it at a 90-degree angle, and Rahu opposed it directly. It was described in the book as Mike Tyson raining down punches on his mind all at once.
It perfectly illustrates the collision between the natal chart, the celestial map at the moment of your birth, and the transiting chart, which is where the planets are moving in the present moment.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Early in the book, the character Laura is designing a video game called Plato's Academy. And she mentions this incredible neuroscientific fact.
I love this part.
Me too. To create a new synapse in the human brain normally takes about 400 repetitions of an action. But if you do it in game-based play, where the brain is primed by dopamine and focus, it only takes 10 to 20 repetitions.
Right. The brain's plasticity is highly dependent on its state of receptivity.
Exactly. So think of your birth chart, your natal moon, as the base code of a video game.
Okay.
If you have a moon afflicted by Saturn and Mars, your brain is highly receptive to stress. It only takes those 10 or 20 reps of friction to create a deep trauma synapse.
Wow.
The transiting planets moving through the sky right now, like what hit Ray Davies in 1973, those are the real-time gameplay. When the real-time game aligns perfectly with the pre-existing vulnerabilities in your base code, that's the trigger. That's who unleashes the black dog.
That is a brilliant way to synthesize it. The natal affliction is the necessary biological condition, and the real-time transit is the environmental trigger.
Exactly.
But, if you look at the sheer mathematical correlation, these 25 charts, it really does force you to ask, why isn't mainstream science or modern academia investigating this kind of multidimensional astrology?
Oh, and the source tackles this head on, and it is pretty scathing.
It doesn't hold back.
No, it argues that modern universities are just hyper-compartmentalized and absolutely terrified of anything that smells like pseudoscience. They pull out this great quote from the physicist Richard Feynman. He said, "Don't confuse education with intelligence. You can have a PhD and still be an idiot."
It's a harsh critique, but it speaks to the institutional inertia of academia, The text pairs that Feynman quote with a philosophy from Arthur Schopenhauer regarding how truth is historically accepted in society.
Remind me of that one.
So Schopenhauer famously said truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. And third, it's finally accepted as being self-evident.
Oh, right.
And the source suggests that when it comes to celestial mechanics influencing biology, we are somewhere stuck between ridicule and violent opposition right now.
And part of the reason mainstream science dismisses this is because when they do look at astrology, they only look in 2D. They only look at the horizontal plane, which is longitude.
Which is a massive blind spot. This brings us right back to declination, the vertical plane. The text points out that the absolute worst mental crises don't just happen when planets align horizontally.
Right.
They happen when afflictions occur in both dimensions simultaneously. Take the tragic deaths of Ernest Hemingway or Marilyn Monroe. On the days they died, the malefic planets weren't just opposite their natal moons in horizontal longitude. They were also contraparallel in vertical declination.
Okay, contraparallel. Give us the visual on that. What does that actually mean in space?
Well, imagine a total solar eclipse.
Okay.
The sun and the moon aren't just kind of near each other in the sky, right?
Yeah.
Their alignment forms a perfect straight line piercing directly through the center of the Earth.
Right.
A contraparallel aspect is a three-dimensional lock. It means two planets are at the exact same degree of distance from the equator, but one is north and one is south.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The geometric mathematical intensity of that gravitational and energetic pressure on the human nervous system, according to the text anyway, is immense. It basically leaves no room for the energy to dissipate.
Okay, I have to pivot away from the gloom here, because looking at Marilyn Monroe and Hemingway's 3D traps is incredibly heavy.
It is very dark.
So if an afflicted moon combined with 3D malefic transits creates a tortured mind, what does a happy chart look like? Like, is there a celestial lottery ticket in this system?
There is, actually.
Oh, good.
A soul at peace, according to Joydish, has a moon that is entirely unafflicted by those malefics. So no Saturn, no Mars, no Rahu, anywhere near it.
Right.
Instead, the moon is aspected by benefics, specifically Venus, which represents love, comfort, and harmony, and Jupiter, which represents deep wisdom and expansion.
So love and wisdom literally shield the mind from trauma in this system.
Precisely. The ultimate signature of mental resilience in Indian astrology is a yoga or planetary combination called Gaja Kasari.
Gaja Kasari, what does that mean?
It translates to the Elephant King.
That's a great name.
It really is. This occurs when Jupiter is in a hard, direct geometric aspect to the moon. But instead of causing friction, this specific combination grants the individual a powerful, near impenetrable shield of good luck, emotional buoyancy, and deep self-confidence.
Wow. Okay, so what does this all mean for the rest of us? Let's bring this back to the practical reality of Elena, or really anyone listening to this who deals with depression.
Yeah.
We know the 3 lunar cycles now. We know how the base code operates. We know what a bad transit looks like. But how does someone actually use this information to heal? I mean, if you can't physically move Saturn, how do you fix the leaky roof?
Right. Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the core argument of the text is that bipolar patients, and really anyone suffering from profound cyclical depression, have had their circadian rhythms fundamentally decoupled from the sun.
Yo.
Their nervous systems have become biologically locked to the erratic cycles of the moon instead. So the cure, therefore, isn't just taking a pill. The cure is breaking that lunar tether and forcefully reconnecting the body to the solar cycle.
And the source gives incredibly practical steps for this. It's not just, think positive thoughts.
No, it's very physical.
It starts with how you sleep. The author recommends sleeping with your head pointing toward the east, the direction of the sunrise. It requires waking up early and rigidly avoiding daytime sleeping so you don't confuse your body's rhythm. But the biggest, most crucial key is light therapy. The text argues that the human brain's primary food isn't actually the calories we eat or even the oxygen we breathe. The brain's most direct, vital source of energy is light itself.
But we have to be extremely specific here. You can't just stare at a fluorescent light bulb in your office, and you absolutely cannot go outside and stare at the sun at high noon.
Right, because when I read the phrase sun gazing in the book, my immediate thought was, isn't that going to fry your retinas and blind you?
If done incorrectly, yes, absolutely. Do not stare at the noon sun.
Please don't.
But the text clarifies a highly specific ancient practice traced all the way back to Orpheus and Pythagoras in ancient Greece, and even to the Egyptians before them.
Wow.
Yeah, the Egyptians actually had different names for the sun depending on its position in the sky. The healing sun is called Khepri, the rising sun at dawn.
Right.
Yes, and the physics of this are critical. At dawn, the sun's rays are tangent to the earth. because of that extreme angle, the light has to pass through the maximum amount of the Earth's atmosphere. So the atmosphere acts as this massive natural filter, completely blocking out the damaging UV and infrared radiation, but allowing the healing, energy-dense photons to pass safely through to the eye.
Okay, but I need to understand the biology here. I get that the atmosphere filters the UV rays, but how does light actually feed or reset the brain? It sounds a bit metaphorical.
It's not metaphorical at all, actually. It is entirely physical. When those dawn photons hit the retina of your eye, they don't just help you see shapes. They travel down a neural pathway called the retinohypothalamic tract directly into the center of the brain to a tiny region called the suprachiasmatic nucleus.
That's a mouthful.
It is. But that tiny region is your body's master clock.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. When Kepri's light hits that clock, it physically signals the pineal gland to halt the production of melatonin, flooding the brain with cortisol and serotonin, and fundamentally resetting your nervous system for a new cycle.
And the book lays out a precise 10-second rule for this therapy.
Right.
Because you don't go out and stare for an hour.
Right.
You start by looking at the rising sun for exactly 10 seconds, ideally standing barefoot on the earth so your body grounds its electrical charge. And then every single day, you increase the time by a maximum of 10 seconds. You slowly, incrementally build up the brain's capacity to absorb these photons.
Exactly.
And the text notes that the absolute peak time of year to begin this practice is during the first month of spring Aries, or when the sun and moon are in a perfect 120-degree trine, which traditionally aligns with the timeline of Easter or Palm Sunday.
It is quite literally a systematic rewiring of the neural pathways. By literally feeding the pineal gland and the master clock with the tangent rays of Kepri, the patient overrides the chaotic, malefic lunar programming in their base code and physically resets their mind to the stable, life-giving rhythm of the solar cycle.
Okay, let's recap this incredible journey we've just been on, because we covered a massive amount of ground today.
We really did.
We started by looking at the limitations of just talking about the black dog and how rumination might just be watering the weeds of our trauma. We discovered through Dr. Ware's hard data that our moods are chained to 3 distinct lunar cycles, including the moon's physical declination.
Right.
We saw how our celestial base or natal chart makes us either an elephant king or leaves us susceptible to real-time malefic triggers, like Ray Davies getting punched by Saturn and Rahu. And finally, we found the physical mechanism for a cure, using the tangent rays of Kepri, the dawn sun, to physically hit the master clock in the brain and rewire the synapses.
It's such a profound synthesis of ancient wisdom and modern circadian biology, but it leaves us with a highly urgent modern dilemma. And this is something for you, the listener, to really mull over tonight. The source states unequivocally that the brain keeps the vast majority of the energy it receives directly from light. Our mental health, the very creation of our synapses, is intricately biologically bound to natural cosmic light cycles. Yeah. So if our minds are this sensitive to photons, what are we unconsciously doing to the base code of our own minds today? We live in an era where we pull blackout curtains to block the dawn. We stare at artificial blue light emitting screens until midnight.
It's so true.
We have completely erased the natural rhythm of darkness and light that the cosmos designed for us. By severing ourselves from the sun and bathing in artificial light, are we actually manufacturing our own malefic transits right in our living rooms?
Are we building our own black dog? That is a haunting thought, but an empowering one, because it means we have the power to change it. Tomorrow morning, before you look at your phone, try to catch the sunrise. Step outside, barefoot if you can, and give your brain 10 seconds of the real thing. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the mental moon. Take care of your base code, and we'll see you next time.